What's good, YouTube? And welcome to the house. So I thought the Stimmy checks wouldn't hit the market that hard at just 600 per person, and they have slam dunked into the metagame, it feels like, more so than collectibles and other things, but we'll go over what's happening in several different areas with something I usually don't do here on Market Watch. I am going to have tabs up from last night on stream along with some other stuff that we didn't cover there, and we're going to refresh to see how much the price has or hasn't changed since then. Starting with Nibiru, last night it was bought out and we see it's back to 120 versus what was a market price of 95, so actual sales there. We've also covered this when it was down to a market price of 86-ish, so it's been climbing back up. So Nibiru shot back past the moon into outer space, and let's see what one day has done to this. Refresh and see if anything has changed, and nope, it's about where it's at from last night. Next up, we have Divine Arsenal AA-ZEUS. If it'll load from last night's prices, we see that there were some motivated sellers around 86, but very low like feedback, and then we have 59 towards 60. So this has been 48 to 52 for the longest. Zeus starting to shoot up. A lot of people knew that this was underestimated. Let's reload and see if anything has changed there. And yes, we still have that one motivated seller with a couple copies, but lower feedback. And then it's 60 solid, so going up even a little more besides that one seller. Animador Archosaur coming in at number 3 instead of number 4 here. He was at $63 last night, with very few copies on market total, so getting a spike there. Dinosaurs are still pretty much, I would say, on the outside of tier 1 being played. It can beat any deck. People still want to see it on the ban list, but it's not necessarily at the top. A lot of people more so considering like Drytron and Virtual World as their decks. Let's see how the Dinosaurs are doing with that. And 6169, nice. Not much of a change since last night. Still very few copies, but a couple more sellers starting to undercut each other a little bit and try to make that profit off this card. I think it's a bit overinflated for the deck that it is, but you can see definitely the Stimmy checks having this slam dunk effect of people who were waiting for some excess money, trying to get their meta cards, and this isn't just a scramble all of a sudden. There's a one-in-one thing that happened here versus how long these cards had sat at their prices or had been creeping down and people going in here. Mind Crush Super Rare got bought out. This one's kind of interesting to me because Mind Crush, if you recall, actually had a ruling against it that hurt it, but it is very hard to get near mint champion pack 8 cards. They're one of the champion packs that have the foil edging problem where it just has on the edges of it the foil showing through straight out of the pack, so near mints are hard to come by. And you can see, yeah, even that other copy, foreign copy, is gone, and now we have 220. Next up, Gold Series. It was just something I was wondering around about. Nibiru very low on quantities, Ash up even further, Blue Eyes White Dragon actually down a bit in price. Very glad to have our first copy of non-short printed Infinite Impermanence holding around 18, and not much changing there around as much besides the 3 hand traps just continue, well, 2 hand traps, but 3 versions of the hand traps continue to seem to go up and up from here. And Blue Eyes is kind of interesting to note that it's going down a little versus what it was, 28, so they were 30 solids, and there were some 26s last night, and now those are gone. Interesting. Collector Rare Nightmare Phoenix and Nightmare Unicorn are up in price, but they're pretty much one-ofs in the extra deck, and also a common misprint problem is there's this goop-like effect on Collector Rares out the pack for many people. I really hate to see it. It looks like something that you don't want on your cards that somebody did famously to a Sky Striker Engage once upon a time that we're not going to talk about in the comment section, please. But when it comes down to it, there's a lot of movement happening in the set. I was wondering why this was lower on quantities and people were scrambling. I believe Kali Effect has actually covered that today, and there's even less quantities today with a going up in price for her. And yeah, the set's pretty solid in terms of prices of cards, and you have some value going up. But I do want to state emphatically the problem of if prices continue to go up, there's just an abundance of the sealed product at low failing prices where it could just get ripped open if there is. So there's this daunting supply hanging over the set having any chance at being good on the inside for a long time. Dragonmaid tidying. Dragonmaid's my eternal rivals on Market Watch. This was bought out, the super rare out of Rise of the Duelist. Rise needs more money, I guess. Let's see if anything's changed. It's gone down a little. 100 copies from Yu-Gi-Oh! Daily. Hey, shoutouts to the sponsors. Good old What's Good 5 to support the channel directly for your discounts. Very interesting to see they had so many on deck, and other sellers seem to have noticed this one at all. I didn't talk to them at all about this card. I only talked about it on the live stream, so that's kind of funny to see them in that first slot. You can see the market price has actually risen on this card from actual sales that were happening, but a fallout overnight versus the buyout. That's why you don't buy your Dragonmaid stuff out. You guys stop that, even if it is okay. Decoys for every single version seem up to ridiculous proportions we covered when it was going up, and just to refresh, you can see a much more friendly price suddenly on Battle Pack, but still the actual near mints, no, they're through the roof towards $12. So a lot of versions of this card. It did recently get a speed duel structure, or not structure, my bad, super rare, speed duel super rare, which I suggested to get at a pretty nice price, and it has gone up as well. And like I said, people love having super rares, even if they're more modern, to go along with stuff like super book and stuff like that. So it matches a lot of stuff that's nice in GOAT format. And then the ultimate rares just hitting the stratosphere. It's going crazy, but it's pretty insane. So if you have the koi cheese, now might be a nice time to sell them before we see another random, like, not at GOAT format through speed duels or something. Rekindling's a card I wanted to bring up because they just made, like, a worse Rekindling, and this card's pretty insane. We did have the conversation that there's a Turbo Pack Super, and it seemed low, but Mystic Fighters also had a super rare that is a nice penny stunk, even versus the DT and other versions, because it's still a holographic that is cheaper than the commons, basically treated as bulk. So if you are actually considering Laval in the future, you think something is going to burst out for them, Super Rekindling might not be the worst option versus the others. Gold Rare famously kind of gets left behind other versions. DT, not bad, but low on quantities for the price point. And this is cheaper than the commons, funny enough. I wanted to bring up a piece of Yu-Gi-Oh! History. This is not a DDS Blue Eyes. This is a Duelist of the Rose, only in Spanish Blue Eyes, that I forgot existed. It was locked in my brain's memory until it came up on a stream, and people asked me if it was a good buy. Over on Card Market, there's not many. It's hard to find it on eBay, but if you can find this, I do think that even though it's a foreign copy, it would be a pretty good and interesting hold versus the DDS Blue Eyes. I think part of the reason that it's stayed cheaper is kind of lack of information on it, and then the foreign language aspect. But when we look up this card, you can actually see it comes in Duelist of the Roses, Spanish edition, and then no other. Not Italian, not German, not French, not European, not North American, only in Spanish, but it's still that prismatic kind of look that looks amazing. Oh, wrong tab, but Downerd Magician is next, which we'll refresh in a bit. So I just wanted to bring up this card as something interesting you might not have known exist, that is worth a lot of money, and I do have a lot of EU people to follow. What do you think of the Duelist of the Roses version versus DDS? I know Duelist of the Roses is one of the most popular games of all time with very fond memories. People like to speedrun it and stuff like that. It has a really huge following, so I do like this version, but let me know if there's something like in person, maybe it doesn't look as good, or there's something about it that you don't like versus the DDS, or are foreign copies just destined to be that way? Downerd Magician bought to extremely low quantities last night. We see a couple more here, less here, more here. Basically, people are just stacking Zeus over Dante and stuff like that, depending on the deck. Whenever you have rank 3s, you go into Downerd, there's an extra free material, you put Zeus on top after. So these continue to get buyouts, a lot of people using it, a lot of people having access. If you have old Burning Abyss decks in your closet, now might be the time to sell before this gets some kind of reprint. Debunk got a buyout. Let's see how those quantities are doing. Yeah, you see more coming back here. Actually, I think less here, but the secret rare being the hardest to get because it's a legendary collection. This has gotten bought out many a time, and since we're in a trap heavy format, and this also stops hand traps along with other effects, like you negate the activation of any effect monster activated in the hand or graveyard. I don't know, like, I do see why people are starting to lean towards it versus Ghost Spell, but then Spell and Trap Destruction's also in the format. You risk setting it. You're getting into player brain talking here, and the Legendary Collection 5 version's the easiest to make disappear, rather than, say, super rare first edition, probably gone to at this point, but Unlimbs are untouched. If the Unlimbs are still here at this price, it just doesn't scream like it's actually seeing that movement, but people did go for the first editions now, it looks like. Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon's just a card I want to bring up that seems to have gone, like, almost every version up. You have Metal Raiders and Retro Pack. It's been up over time, though this isn't super fresh. It's because people like to use that Thunder Dragon fusion for just 2 materials, and that becomes very useful because then you still have the third, and then you can do other things with it, and you have a fusion Thunder Dragon on the field. All the nice kind of stuff with that. So that's why these versions seem to be up over time. And the Retro Pack 1, of course, that's a super hard pack to get, so these are worth a little more money maybe than you thought they were. Now we're to the point where I don't have to refresh anymore because these weren't on stream last night. The familiar possessed holographics are very low in quantities for the RNG ones and going up in price slowly, it feels like. Dark Ruler no more not being played the most in this format, so it's kind of cheap. But yeah, all the RNG stuff, if you bought it from Yu-Gi-Oh! Daily early on, or you got these things in early, you paid a little bit less, they've started to go up. RNG and structure decks as stonks is interesting to me because the structure decks are still available super cheap versus the kinds of pulls that you can get, but there's still so few people listing despite the sealed listings. Kind of an interesting concept for a structure deck that wouldn't have created a lot of demand on its own, and outperforming something like Dual Devastator actually in concept is interesting to me because Dual Devastator had so much to offer, whereas, oh boy, alternate arts of waifus better complete my collection seems to be actually better for the secondary market. But yeah, the field centers weren't good enough, basically. Red Eyes Fusion for the super rare, it's been up for a while, but the first eds are kind of retraining towards 30, while the super unlims, very few and far between. Dragoon's been getting a lot more eyes on it, so people love hollowing out their deck and having the best versions. Dragoon kind of actually dipped and then went back up, and he is now around $45, $46 again, and continues to seem to kind of have a trend. So if you kept Dragoons versus that long drought period of not seeing play and being low, you're winning. I still think now would be a great time to sell him. Oh, Ghost Rare Dragoon. The people who keep bringing up the ghosts from the past Ghost Rares and what they think they want to see, I don't think Firewall is going to be one, because if Firewall gets a reprint, it's going to be a mass errata, so the Ghost Rare is not going to be in the core set. Now, they could pull a tricky, like, in the core set to give us the Alter Art Firewall and have a Ghost Rare Original Art Firewall and do something tricky like that, but they've kind of stated that they don't plan to make the Ghost Rare a card in the set like Blue Eyes Alternative, so the reprint that's finally out of the movie pack, we don't massively get, we get it as a Ghost Rare. Anyways, points aside, I don't think Firewall will be the Ghost Rare on that conversation, and we're straying from Market Watch here, so that's gonna end it for me. That's a conversation for another day or live stream. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I don't know what you're doing if you haven't subscribed. Stick around and enjoy the videos. Like this video if you enjoy these discussions, and what do you think going around the market, how the stimulus checks have impacted things, how the collector market's still going kind of crazy even on cards that have had their history changed, and then cards that are just lost to time and conversation, such as Duelist of the Rose Blue Eyes. I think there's a ton to talk about, and it's been really fun kind of watching the market during this time, even when it gets volatile and it's buyout. This time I'm not as sick of it. Some of it I actually find interesting what's happening instead of just stupid and redundant.